welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Barjo.
What are you doing?
I'm keeping away from you. You're full of germs.
It's just a cold, Barjo.
Yeah, for now. It'll mutate and then turn into something much worse and take over. No.
It'll be fine.
Coming up this week, we've been playing some interesting games, haven't we, Hex? The slicey stabby action of Ninja Gaiden 3.
Perhaps you can take your revenge.
And the bizarre anime-inspired Asura's Wrath.
Just tell me what to do when she starts crying.
Then he should pacify her.
And you've been roaming the gorgeous landscapes of the Guild Wars 2 beta for our new segment on good free-to-play gaming. Where are you?
That's right, Hex, and it's an MMO that dares to do something different, so it's very exciting.
Like a show of force, Blood Legion.
And this being the 15-year anniversary of the Nintendo 64 console, Goose dons his rose-coloured glasses for a bit of a backwards compatible. Well, Barjo, we share controllers anyway. You've probably already got it.
Well, that's a good point, actually. Well, can you guess the game for this week? You
may remember a few weeks ago we reviewed Resident Evil Raccoon City, but didn't want to score it without testing the online. Well, now we've done that, and sadly the online seems to only highlight the game's flaws even further.
Yes, it's still not very much fun, except now you have the addition of having to deal with lag. I didn't last very long with this, Hex. Even with the addition of Versus mode, it still doesn't stand up to games like Killing Floor or Left 4 Dead, and the enemies are still, they take too many bullets to go down. Even with the help of friends, it's way too hard.
Yeah, and the issue of taking bullets hasn't been resolved in the final code, so half the time you feel like your bullets aren't even hitting the enemy. I'm giving it 4.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yes, 'tis a shame. I'm giving it 4 out of 10. I think I'm gonna go read the news. And get away from all of this.
What? I'm sick.
Filthy germs!
Good game.
An online petition named Retake Mass Effect was recently created by angry fans unhappy with Mass Effect 3's ending. It was in an effort to raise money for gaming charity Child's Play and get the attention of developer BioWare.
That's a start.
The petition raised $80,000, but was ended after intervention by Child's Play founders Mike Krahilic and Jerry Holkins, who released a statement explaining Child's Play cannot be a tool to draw attention to a cause. Child's Play must be the cause. BioWare has spoken up to say they are working on content initiatives to placate those unhappy with how the game resolved the trilogy. A Microsoft patent has surfaced for a compact head-mounted display system capable of both stereoscopic 3D and augmented reality gaming. What may look like glasses or goggles are in fact mini projectors that can give the impression of a 16:9 display about an arm's length away. As with most patents, there's nothing to say that this is a product actually in development. The Bioshock movie has now lost its second director, with Gore Verbinski's replacement Juan Carlos Fresnadillo now walking away from the project. Citing frustration with the movie's slow progress, Fresnadillo claims that Universal and Irrational do not see eye to eye on the film's budget or its potential as an R-rated film. Bethesda's promising sci-fi shooter sequel Prey 2 is rumoured to have been cancelled after a forum post from a supposed insider at developer Human Head claimed as such. This follows on from all Prey 2 related talk being pulled from the recent game developers conference in San Francisco at the behest of parent company ZeniMax. Bethesda has so far offered only a no comment, despite worldwide reporting on the rumour.
Good game.
Asura's Wrath is what comes of a mighty battle between demigods, their enemies, and each other. And it might be one of the strangest games I've ever played, Badge.
It's weird.
Ruthless scum. I'll kill you.
You begin the game in a battle to save your planet. The impure Goma are ravaging the land, and you take the role of Asura, one of 8 godly warriors fighting to protect heaven and earth from total destruction.
As this epic cutscene plays out, you're involved in a series of quick-time events that earn you a rating at the end of the chapter, depending on how well you did. And once that cutscene ended, another one began, and so this game just became one giant, continuous quick-time event, just spattered with little brawl moments and on-rail sections.
I know, it was unbelievable. I can't believe how little I was involved in what was actually happening here.
Asura! You traitorous filth! No, it wasn't me.
Early on in the game, Asura is accused of a murder he didn't commit and his daughter is kidnapped, so he spends the rest of the game fighting both the Goma and the other deities to try and rescue his daughter Mithra and set things right. But all this happens in long cutscenes that span across various episodes where you're only involved by occasionally hitting triangle or pulling the thumbsticks in a particular direction. Fans of anime may enjoy the episodic nature of this game. It's really what I'd call this is more of an interactive anime than a game.
Yeah, when you do finally get to some actual gameplay, it's pretty much just button mashing, heavy and light attacks, until you fill up a meter and then push R2, which plays out the ending animation of a fight.
Yeah, all those shooter sections where I felt like nothing I was doing was having any effect or impact anyway. I mean, part of me was like taking me back to those QuickTime Event movie sections.
Nonsense!
And I want to say that the story made up for this, and while it isn't terrible, it's similar to that of, say, Darksiders or God of War, but with a weird mix of Hinduism and sci-fi, you rarely have the opportunity to feel anything for the characters. It's just a whole lot of Asura hulking out and going on about how angry he is about everything.
Can nothing quell my anger?
And then the episode ends and you have to button through a bunch of written dialogue between loading screens, which is apparently more depth to the story, and then a voiceover lady comes on and literally tells you what is about to happen.
Amidst the battle, Asura discovers a mysterious machine on board one of the ships. What purpose does it serve?
Why?
I think that voiceover thing might be an anime technique, I'm not sure though. I did like that opening sequence. It was very spectacular, and once again, you're not really doing much game in it all, but it was so confusing that that actually was an achievement in my opinion. It made me want to learn more about it. Not sure if I ever got there, but it was that sci-fi and Hindu element is quite interesting. It's an interesting premise. At some points, Asura's rage would cause him to spawn multiple arms, and at other times you find yourself having to fight with no arms at all.
Take back your daughter!
What I found frustrating about these brawler sections was that the gameplay didn't actually vary, whether you were fighting a demon like Goma or another massive deity.
I thought it was funny how every Goma had a specific impurity rating, from the 10s to the 100s to this one giant thing that took a big old bite out of the side of the earth that had an impurity rating that was immeasurable.
Of course, none of that matters anyway, because how powerful they are makes no difference. Some bosses don't even have health bars, and some enemies just spawn endlessly. The whole point is to fill up that power meter at the top of the screen, so you can push R2 and trigger that transition into the next scene. I guess it works to pull you along in the game, but you feel more like a passenger rather than in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think some people will really go for this, especially if you approach it as just simply being involved in an animated story. But for me, all those QuickTime events just had me losing interest, so much so that I'd often get distracted completely and just forget to do the QuickTime events at all. Barjo.
It reminded me a little bit of that game Ninja Blade, which was very much a long QuickTime event, that whole game too, but at least I found that a lot more interesting. You felt a bit more connected to what was going on, but I didn't get that here at all.
Yeah, neither did I, Badger. I think it's a unique idea, but in my opinion, executed really poorly, so I'm giving it 3 out of 10.
Yes, for a full-priced game, you don't get that much game here, so I'm giving it 3 out of 10 rubber chickens. Obviously, this isn't a game for everyone, and we recently spoke to 2 of the developers behind it to talk about the unique gameplay they were trying to achieve here.
Asura's Wrath is a new type of game. It fits within the action genre, but it's a new take on the action genre. We're trying to break the mold with past action games and try and create something new and more dynamic as a gameplay experience.
And you can see that full interview on the website. One way to play the latest games, even before they've come out, is to get on the beta. Betas usually require knowing ahead of time when they're going to take place, maybe registering on a website or owning a previous version of the game, something like that. Either way, there are many ways to access a beta, but they're usually for free. Betas are an incomplete version of the game, and they're often designed to look for bugs or maybe test out server loads for online games, and they can cause developers to rethink an entire mechanical section of a game if it's not received well by the community. Guild Wars 2 is one of the bigger MMOs coming out this year, and the beta for it has been and gone, but we've had a play and it's doing some very interesting things. Firstly, the look of the game, it has this beautiful painterly feel to it. And there's heaps of classes too, from your standard warriors, hunters, a thief, to a mix of magic classes and engineers. The cosmetic character customization options are more complex than any other MMO out there. And you can also dye all of your gear different colours, but more importantly, there's a good selection of hairstyles. I spent most of my time as a thief who has the unique ability of shadow stepping to a target, then stealing something from them and using it against them, such as a weapon, or in the case of creatures, goo or liquid. It's a fun class, and the first thing you notice is just how reactive this combat looks and feels. It's very much about positioning, and it's all instant and easy to understand, so you can just jump in and start attacking the air if you want to. Locations are peppered with weapons and items that you can pick up off the ground, and you can also mix up your own abilities to produce unique results. You can also combine your abilities with those of other players, and this will produce unique results, such as shooting arrows through fire, and then the arrows catch fire and you get a damage bonus. And there are so many abilities each character has, but you can only have a certain amount on your abilities bar at one time. Each class can also heal themselves, and this makes for some very long fights with other players. It's a very different way of playing an MMO, but I like it a lot. There's also all these traits to play with, and it's quite daunting at first, but I love playing with talent trees, so I think I'm going to have quite a bit of fun customizing my class. One thing I also love is PvP trolling, and that's one thing where I'm on the fence with this game, because there's no world PvP. There's no two factions fighting it out. Everyone's on the same side, more or less. There is server versus server PvP in a big open world, and that's very ambitious, and it might work. The very different thing about PvP is when you jump into a quick match, everyone's gear is the same as far as I can tell, and everyone is pushed up to level 80 and all the abilities are unlocked, so it's a level playing field. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I do like that you can jump in with a level 1 character and suddenly have everything unlocked and play with their final abilities. The other thing that's very different about this MMO is it doesn't actually have quests. You'll stumble into dynamic events that are already happening, a bit like Rift's events, but it's for everything.
The next thieving rat I grab, I'm going to fire out of a cannon.
So this means you don't have to wait for another player to finish questing in the area before you can jump in. You come in either at the end or at the start or at the middle. Either way you contribute and then take away your prize. And it also makes everything feel less static and scripted. You will go exploring on your own just to discover things so you can get tougher and move to the next area. And I like that exploration side of things. We've only been playing this for a day and there's already so much to talk about, but the good thing is it's taking steps forward for the genre. You can fast travel anytime, there are no mailboxes, when you're walking around on the map you can see footsteps of where you've gone, all these little things. The only thing that's taking a step back is all of the story side of things. The cutscenes feel so dated after Old Republic. I think they're more evolved than the likes of WoW or other MMOs out there, but they're still very painful, and the voice acting is so bad. I'm hoping that it's temporary voices.
I can and I will. This is where my legend begins.
Once again, this might be far from the final product, but betas are a fun way to get a taste of what's to come for free, but they can also leave a bad taste in your mouth, so beta at your own risk.
The Nintendo 64 holds a special place in many gamers' hearts, not to mention my own. Long before its release, I was a Nintendo fanboy, but nothing would compare to the utter joy I got from my 64. I was obsessed, hooked. I spent every waking minute trying to play it. In fact, my mum had to hide the controllers just to get me out of the house. Well, this year marks the 15th birthday of the Nintendo 64, so we thought we'd take a look back at the legacy of this 64-bit legend. The story of the console's development is full of controversy and intrigue, but it was the games that we had the deepest connection with, so let's start with those. Super Mario 64 was all you could have asked for in a launch title. It took the much-loved 2D star Mario and gave him a spectacular 3D reimagining. The game not only showed off the new power of the Nintendo 64, but it created the building blocks for many of today's games, inspiring the industry's development profoundly. Few video games could match the sheer giddy delight we got from Mario 64 back in 1997. Things like realising that mountain off in the distance was able to be climbed, that was something else. It scattered clever objectives around its levels and gave you the freedom to explore and tackle them at your own pace. There aren't many games out there that deserve to be described as magical, but this is one of them. Just like Mario reshaped the platforming genre, the James Bond game GoldenEye set the standards for console first-person shooters for the years to come. GoldenEye introduced more features that we take for granted today than I could possibly list. Okay, what the hell, I'll give it a go. Stealth gameplay, zoomable sniper rifles, mission objectives like hacking computers, bullet holes in scenery, enemies that reacted to where you shot them, remote mines, NPCs you could complete objectives with, security cameras, blocks you could shoot off, throwing knives, vehicles you could drive, and the biggest of all, split-screen multiplayer. This game was amazing. GoldenEye gave us a gaming experience that was literally years ahead of its time. The next title in the Triforce of unforgettable N64 games was, of course, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. When Mario 64 and GoldenEye's gameplay was confined to disconnected locations, Zelda delivered a fully fleshed out world we could explore, packed with tasks to complete and its own day and night cycles. Zelda also gave us a ton of new gameplay innovations. Previously, fighting enemies in 3D games was a clumsy mess as you struggled to keep both your attacks and view focused on an enemy. Zelda solved this with its Z targeting, which locked your attacks and the camera onto a specific enemy. Context-sensitive actions and auto-jumping were another two innovations Zelda created to allow you to navigate its sprawling world without the need to memorize 50 button combinations. With Ocarina of Time, Nintendo's gaming guru, Shigeru Miyamoto, had created what many considered to be his opus. And 14 years after its release, it still stands as the most critically acclaimed game of all time. While we were busy having fun collecting stars in Mario or playing ocarinas in Zelda, there were some fascinating power struggles going on behind the scenes. Not unlike Apple of recent times, Nintendo was intensely protective, wanting to control every aspect of their gaming technology. Sony's PlayStation was almost a CD add-on for Nintendo. Both companies were in discussions to partner on a console in the early 90s, but Nintendo snubbed Sony and cancelled discussions, creating its biggest rival in the process. Fueled by a desire to exact vengeance on Nintendo, Sony released the PlayStation, and we all know how that turned out. Now that Nintendo was in direct competition with Sony, they needed to pull something special out of the bag, so they created the Nintendo 64. The 64 referred to it having a 64-bit CPU. While its competitors Sony and Sega had 32-bit consoles, the Nintendo 64's processor and graphics chip allowed it to do more advanced effects like Liquid Metal Mario, but its limited memory meant it didn't have much 3D grunt as the other consoles. This led to the infamous N64 fog. A thick pea soup fog was used in many games to limit your vision and hide the fact that the N64 could only generate the 3D background a few meters in front of you. When the 64 launched back in '97, CDs were the dominant form of storage technology. Nintendo stubbornly chose to use cartridges. It was this decision more than any other that was responsible for PlayStation outselling the N64.
This is the end of the road.
Cartridges did have some advantages over CDs, namely they had faster loading times and were more child-friendly as they were practically unbreakable. There were some serious downsides, however. They were far more costly to produce, they could only store 5% of a CD's capacity, plus you had to do this a lot. Many high-profile publishers simply refused to work with Nintendo and be restricted by their cartridges, most famously Squaresoft, whose Final Fantasy series had previously been exclusive to Nintendo. Instead, they chose to jump ship and create the hugely successful Final Fantasy VII exclusively for PlayStation. The list of previously loyal publishers who turned their back on Nintendo reads like a who's who of today's franchises. But quality over quantity would become the defining theme for the Nintendo 64. Without the support of many big game publishers, the responsibility of creating blockbuster hits would rest solely on Nintendo's shoulders. Other classics to come from the Nintendo stable included Mario Kart 64, which expanded on the original game by adding a brilliant 4-player split-screen mode. Wave Race 64 had amazing water physics and sublime handling. Star Fox had epic 3D space combat, and Pilot Wings gave us the feeling of immense freedom and exploration. Then there was the surprisingly mature Zelda sequel Majora's Mask, a game that built on the successes from Ocarina and is in fact my favourite game of all time. Rare, the studio behind GoldenEye, was second only to Nintendo in its ability to create amazing N64 games. Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, and Diddy Kong Racing were all huge successes, but arguably the biggest compliment Rare received was the trust Nintendo placed in it to make important games like Donkey Kong 64, using key Nintendo characters.
Well done!
And who could forget the N64's iconic controller?
Complete 3D movement.
Its analog stick and rumble pack were hugely popular.
Unique rumble pack.
You can find elements of both of these in all of today's controllers. It's hard to not look back on my time with the N64 without getting a warm and fuzzy feeling. It was responsible for so many of my greatest gaming moments, and I'm sure many of you feel the same. So happy 15th birthday, Nintendo 64. Now, if you don't mind, I've got a date with nostalgia.
Good game.
Thanks, Goose. Hex, there aren't enough ninja games, are there?
I agree, Budge. I mean, they just work so well for video games, don't they?
Yeah, and the only real decent series of note lately has been the Ninja Gaiden series. The first Ninja Gaiden was well known for its fast-paced, frantic action that really got you into that zone of being an awesome ninja. 2 was more of the same, but it did lose some of the magic with its imbalanced difficulty.
Ninja Gaiden 3 sees the return of Ryu Hayabusa, who was called out by a terrorist organisation that are targeting the Prime Minister in London.
Bring us Ryu Hayabusa. Bring us Ryu Hayabusa.
Upon storming the city, Ryu meets an enigmatic masked ninja who wants him dead and who also seems to own a lot of helicopters.
Time to talk is at an end.
So many helicopters, Hex, and Ryu takes him down so easily. You think after he sent the first couple and they were destroyed, he'd go, okay, no more helicopters, but no. Next one, another one after another. Just keep going. Eventually one of those helicopters will take him down. It's pretty hard to follow the story from that point on, and the thing I found so strange, Hex, was that there's this girl who can't talk, so she uses her phone to communicate with him, and she's a bit creepy, and for some reason he cares so much about her and does so much to try and save her and slaughters so many people in the process, but he's only known her about 5 minutes. It's just a bit strange.
Yeah, it's not a very believable story at all. Ninja Gaiden 3 doesn't have legendary game designer Tomonobu Itagaki behind the wheel this time, and you really feel it. It just doesn't have the wonderful aesthetic of the previous games. Locations and ideas such as this simulation section have their moments, but they just feel out of place, really.
Hex, I felt this was such a step back for the series in so many ways. For a start, it doesn't have any dismemberment, and if you know anything about ninjas, you know they have very sharp swords, and it's that brutality of that combat that makes it interesting. The hacked off limbs in Ninja Gaiden 2 was vital, not only because you could see which enemy was weakened so you could finish them off, but it just made you feel more like a ninja. Here it just felt like I was whacking people with my ninja stick.
Expensive toy.
Yeah, and it's not like we're saying we need gore for gore's sake. I mean, it certainly didn't feel that way with the last game. It's just that this style is integral to the theme and aesthetic of the genre. I mean, it's almost like the way the censored version of Left 4 Dead 2 made the zombies lose all impact. I mean, there is lots of spurting blood, but it's just not the same. The animations are beautiful though. The way Ryu moves about attacking enemies is fluid. You won't notice any frame skips or weird animations. I love the way that dash knocks people over. What? There's not much of a tutorial though, so you end up working out combos on your own, which takes time. Every now and again, Ryu's cursed arm will glow red, which lets you dash about for a powerful attack.
Stay sharp.
And when you fill up a combat meter, you can unleash a dragon which eats a bunch of enemies at once. I really feel like you should get that arm seen to, some antibiotics or something.
What do you mean?
You know, that dragon ability looks so spectacular the first time you do it, but it's actually really boring to do because you don't do anything. It does it all for you. Same with the arm dash ability. And I know I'm going a lot back to 2 here and comparing it, but all those abilities were more interesting. You know, you'd paint your targets and you'd shoot them off. And here, there's no weapons or other abilities to upgrade. All of that has been taken out. This whole game has been stripped back to a button masher. You don't get to learn how to tie combos and abilities and magic all together in a fight. You just bash through it, activate your 2 abilities when you can, and then there's hardly any satisfaction when you've cleaned up the room. Also, the camera moves around in these fights so much, I found that really disorientating.
Yeah, it is very heavy on QuickTime events as well.
Oh, what fun, eh?
Yeah, oh, I hated that climbing one more than anything else.
I didn't mind the climbing one. In fact, that was one of the few uses of QuickTime that I thought were actually quite clever. Using the 2 bumpers to climb.
Stupid.
Throw a dagger.
Stupid. I'd fall off all the time. Like, ah! Stupid.
I didn't fall off.
You just don't stop.
Most enemies can be finished with a QuickTime event as well, but it's just not satisfying to do a brutal finisher if it doesn't look brutal, and also half the time they don't come up in normal combat on purpose. Enemy types are varied enough. I think I like those cloak ones the best, Barger.
Yeah, but I still found all these fights really repetitive because you're just thrown in a series of rooms and then goons just keep coming and coming and they all take way too many hits. I also found the non-combat sections quite unfair. Just one false step and it's all over. In fairness, the game does try to genuinely surprise you during combat and action sequences.
A radio. But where is it?
And they do a pretty good job of that, although you do start to see it coming after a while just because of the repetition in this game. I also didn't find it particularly hard. I found it cheap at times, but not hard, and that's a trademark of the series, and now it's gone.
Yeah, but I think if you're coming fresh to Ninja Gaiden 3 and you haven't played the original games, and you'll still have an okay time here. I mean, there's some really varied and beautiful environments, and the game does look spectacular.
I just think if you're going to make a Ninja Gaiden 3 and put that 3 on it, you need to look at what people really loved about the previous games and build and expand on that, not strip it all away.
Yeah, I still just don't think it's a bad game though, Barjo. It's just not a great one.
I think it's a bad game. I felt genuinely sad playing this. I wanted to be an awesome ninja and learning when I needed to block and getting into that ninja zone and getting better at being a ninja and cleaning up a room and then, you know, going like that, but I just didn't feel any of that here.
Is this your ninja zone?
That's my ninja zone. I wanted to be having awesome ninja battles, not dodging rockets in the street.
Who uses a rocket launcher as their primary weapon for a target that's 5 meters away? And there was heaps of them, isn't it? And they always miss. They always shot up into the air. Stupid.
Although I do give them points for letting me fight a T-Rex with a sword. It was a completely rubbish battle, but it was still pretty cool. And I know it's a bit of a spoiler, but I think this game needs all the help it can get, personally. So.
All right, well, what are you giving it then?
I'm going to give it 4 out of 10.
I'm giving it 6.
I see you liked my new watchdog. I really must apologize for forgetting to leave out a beware of bombs.
Good game.
So did you guess the game for this week?
What could it be? Now we shall see. Practicing my rhyming.
Like Dr. Zeus.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Pretty good.
It was the N64 classic Blast Core. Developed by those wizards at Rare, it was all about demolishing buildings to make way for a truck carrying nuclear weapons. Stressful.
Hex, I'm officially ninja'd and zombied out. Tell me we've got some pirates next week.
No pirates, but we do have giant robots as we'll be reviewing Armored Core 5.
Actually, I think you'll find them mechs. Don't forget, the Good Game app is available for free on iOS. We've enjoyed reading all of your reviews, even the troll ones.
And thanks for tweeting along, tweeters. Till next time, Hex out.
Barjo out. No!